My name is Gavin Evans, and this is my review of The Sadness. Now, this is a movie that wasn't on my radar at all, but then it came out and I started to hear some good things about it, and then I heard better things about it and better things, and I started to hear this was one of the craziest, most insane, fucked up movies ever made. I heard it was one of the bloodiest ever as well. So then I'm just like, okay, now I have to check this movie out. And everything I heard about the blood and gore in this movie was absolutely correct. This movie is insanely bloody. Like almost every scene is just dripping in blood. And when it goes down, it doesn't go down in small amounts. It just goes all out there. So if you don't like seeing blood in movies, this one definitely isn't for you. And I do like how quickly everything goes to shit in this movie. Like it begins, it introduces the characters, and then before you know it, someone gets some incredibly hot oil thrown at their face, and then they start peeling their face away, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, like, it just got super crazy, super fast. And if this movie was just an insanely bloody, fast-paced zombie movie, I would be completely on board for it. But where the movie loses me is in just how sexual it is. I don't know how much of my biggest issues regarding this movie I can actually discuss on YouTube, but there's lots of sexual content in this movie, and it's very forced, for lack of a better term. And it just happens time and time again, and it became too much. I couldn't enjoy this movie by any means. Like, what is this movie trying to accomplish? Are you trying to be this movie where you're just left watching all this horrific stuff happening and you're just meant to take it all in? Because I don't think it succeeds in that, in just how over the top it is and how the characters talk. And it can't be this super bloody but fun zombie movie because of just how much really disgusting stuff of a sexual nature is in this movie. Like, I don't need to see zombie orgies, and I think this movie crosses the line a few too many times. And then, so that just takes away all enjoyment I could have from this movie. But then, just the way some of the dialogue is written, it feels very immature. It feels like it's trying super hard to be dark and edgy. Like, there's this one character walking down the hallway saying the most sadistic sexual things, and it just felt so repugnant for the sake of it. It feels like the most juvenile person is writing these threats in the movie, and it just came across as very cringy for me. And I don't even think this movie has a good story. Just nothing happens. This is as standard as it comes when it comes to zombie movies. It's normal, it introduces these two characters, everything goes crazy, and you're just waiting for it to build to something, and it never really does. Things just happen for the sake of it, and by the end, just everything that you see in this movie feels totally and completely pointless. At an hour and 40 minutes, I think this movie is about 20 minutes too long. As bloody and as insane as it is, I think it's very slow paced in moments, and I think it needed more energy throughout, especially in the last act, because it just slows down to a halt. And like I said, it just feels like this movie is building to nothing. There's no real goal, there's no real destination, no nothing. Like, the two main characters are trying to reunite, but they don't lean into that nearly enough, and you don't really feel invested in their journey. And it doesn't help that the two main characters are just lacking in general. Like, the guy in this movie, whose name I just don't remember and I don't care enough to look up, the only bit of character that this guy has is that in the beginning of the movie, he can't go on vacation with his wife because he just got a gig. That's it. And then he also does this one thing that really bothers me, because the movie starts off and they just wake up, and then she's showering and getting ready for work or school or whatever it is that she's doing, and he goes out to the balcony, and before they leave, he plugs in his phone, which is in 3%, and then leaves the house. So he just woke up, he didn't charge his phone, and then before he leaves his house, he plugs in his phone and leaves it there. Like, come on, nobody does that. Not a single person does that. especially not in this day and age. And then I didn't find the girl character to be much better. Based on what we hear in the first bit of the movie, she's hardworking, she doesn't get much time off, and she gets annoyed that her boyfriend won't go on vacation with her. That's it. That's the extent of her character. And I don't think she was even a good person. Like, there's one point where she's in a building and she sees that someone is going to break into the building, and instead of warning everyone else, she just gets up and leaves them all to die. So she comes across as a very bad person, and the relationship between these two characters I just found to be lacking. I didn't care if they ever reunited. Why would I? You know, if the movie began and you saw this couple who was in love and they really cared for each other, you'd be a lot more on board for it. But you don't see any real love, you don't feel any passion between them, so it just feels like a basic cliche to introduce these characters and to start the plot. And then there's this one girl who gets stabbed in the eye on this train, and I just couldn't care less about her. And the main girlfriend character rescues her, and they run away from this guy, and all they do is run and scream and scream. It's just like, get going! Like, come on, this is just getting annoying. And speaking of the guy chasing them, there's this guy on the train who's just a real creep. And he becomes the main villain of this movie. And I just don't think we needed the introduction to this character that we got. Because once he's infected, he would have acted the same way no matter what. So we didn't need all that beginning part of his character. We could have just gone into insanity with him. So this character could have been any other zombie. It could have been a bunch of zombies, but I didn't think this character added anything. And then there's this one security guy who the writers clearly hated because the movie just treats him like he's the worst person ever, because they see the two girls getting chased by the one creep and he closes the door and they're just like, look how terrible this guy is for closing the door. But I don't blame him at all. In that situation where everyone's infected and everyone's doing terrible things, we would all do the same thing. So I hate the fact that the movie looks down on him, and then they write him to be the biggest coward ever, so your hatred of him feels justified. So I didn't like any of these characters. No one stands out in any way. Like, I guess the performances are decent, but the writing just isn't there. And then, without getting too much into it, this movie definitely has a political aspect to it, and if you look at the past 2 years, it could be drawing comparisons to that. I don't know if it is. I do know this movie is based on a graphic novel, but let's say it is. It's completely disingenuous to compare the disease in this movie to any real life disease that we might have experienced in the 2 years. I think that's just asinine. But that said, let's say the virus in this movie existed and it broke out. Based on our past experiences with the government, it would play out like it did in this movie. So I'm not sure if it's trying to make a comment on these past couple years or not, but it doesn't bother me too much because once the movie gets going, it kind of forgets about that, and the way the movie plays out in the last act, I don't think it's trying to make commentary. If it does, it doesn't work. I disagree with it, but I don't think that's the point of the movie. And one more thing I want to comment on for this movie is that there's this one really goofy moment where this one guy puts a grenade in someone's mouth and the head blows up. And it looks very over the top, very cheesy, and it's the goofiest and best moment of this entire movie. And I wanted more of that. Like, if you take an excellent zombie movie like Brain Dead, that's so insanely bloody and goofy, and something that works well as both a horror movie and as a comedy, I would have loved that approach to this movie much more. But this movie just takes itself so serious. And the sexual stuff ruins any fun that could be had with this movie. And some people might comment in the comment section, but Gavin, in Brain Dead, there is some sexual stuff, but I'd say it's portrayed completely differently than it is in this movie. And I just don't think this movie works in any way. It doesn't work as a fun, insane zombie movie. It doesn't work as this horrific horror movie that gets under your skin because you just have zero investment in anything going on. The story is as underwhelming as it could be. It just feels like it's not building to anything for the entire movie. The characters are so dull and forgettable. It tries really hard to be dark and edgy and just falls completely flat. And it's just shocking things happening for the sake of it. Shocking things get said for the sake of it. Rinse and repeat for an hour and 40 minutes, and it just gets really old and still fast. This movie is nothing more than shock value. And what I mean by that is that it's not reliant on good writing, good characters, good tension, funny moments, or anything like that. It's just trying to gain a reaction from you based on how bloody and how gross and just really wrong this movie is. And that doesn't sit right with me. I like the blood effects. I do think it has some great moments, but as a whole, this movie just did not work for me. So I'm going to go ahead and give The Sadness a 4 out of 10. Okay, have you seen The Sadness? Was the sadness caused by your disappointment of this movie? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you like, make sure you comment, make sure you subscribe. Stay tuned for some more videos soon, and Gavin out.